Hello there, this is Senris. In this video we will be discussing the political ideologies of the various classes in Diablo 2 Resurrected. They come from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, and as such their politics span the entire political spectrum. Let's begin with perhaps the most iconic of the D2 classes, the Barbarian. The Barbarian is an insurrectionary communist. He takes the liberation of the working class from all forms of oppression very seriously and was ready for the revolution to start yesterday. He organizes with other like-minded radicals to achieve tangible and material improvements in the lives of his community, often finding potions and items for his neighbors.
A gift for you. This is yours.
Building dual power and direct action are priorities to him, as he trusts the working class people of Sanctuary to overthrow the capitalist tyrants that rule them once the material conditions are right. He views political violence as an unfortunate but necessary part of destroying capitalism, and feels he is justified because no amount of violence in a revolution could ever exceed the amount of violence inherent to capitalism. Most of the other classes view this assessment as quite a leap, and see him as a frenzied authoritarian. His views are seen as anachronistic and having terrible optics by many of his potential allies. The Necromancer sees eye to eye with him on some issues, but the next class, the Amazon, is his sworn enemy. The Amazon calls herself an alt-right conservative, but she isn't fooling anyone besides rich liberals like the Assassin. As part of the Amazon identitarian movement, she believes people rolling other classes is slowly leading to the extinction of the Amazons. She is very intolerant of most of the other classes and has been accused of racism many times, but she usually manages to dodge, evade, or otherwise avoid these claims. She was very popular on sites like YouTube a few years ago, where she used sophistry and high production values to convince impressionable teenagers of her views. Despite her hateful rhetoric, her videos were able to pierce through the algorithm like a lightning strike. Eventually her views were heavily challenged in online spaces as other internet personalities took multiple shots at her, and she started to fall out of favor. She became an obscure and forgotten figure until she started getting a lot of exposure from the next class, the Druid. The Druid is a rad-lib debate bro. He ostensibly believes in socialist and anarchist principles, but he seems to think socialism is when markets allow for free healthcare in college, and that the best way to achieve socialism is to vote for Democrats. He rejects direct action to achieve his goals and instead believes that engaging in debate is the highest form of praxis. He will happily engage with any political figure, no matter how odious. Rhetorically, he is quite formidable, and he is often able to maul his opponents with a tornado of facts and logic. He has many rabid fans that will quickly point out that his detractors are taking him out of context, or that they have Druid derangement syndrome. Many former Amazon players claim they were converted to Druids by him, although it's not clear how this compares with how many people take an interest in Amazons because they are platformed so often. Despite the fact that he seems to be closer to the Barbarian politically than the Amazon, the Druid is constantly creating a fissure between himself and the Barb. He claims there is a Barbarian-Amazon alliance, even though the Druid himself spends more time with the Amazon than any other class. The Paladin is an evangelical neoconservative. He spends his time traveling around the world smiting his enemies, which include people with resources he wants, people of other religions, and people he considers communists, which is basically everyone. His defiance of international law and his zeal for increasing the stock prices of Boeing and Halliburton is fanatical. He views the torture of his enemies as justified, and the massive loss of life on both sides of any conflict as a necessary sacrifice to ensure that the US is the sole superpower and main arms dealer for the entire world. He is responsible for more coups, assassinations, and toppled governments than any other class. He uses his religion and supposed moral superiority as a holy shield to protect himself from criticism, but when it comes down to it, his politics boil down to might makes right. The Paladin hates all other classes besides the Amazon, whom he only tolerates because without her, their coalition wouldn't have the numbers to maintain power. The Sorceress is a social democrat that has become disillusioned with the Democratic Party and now votes green. She is very concerned with climate change and income inequality and doesn't trust either major party to do anything about it. She's starting to dip her toes into socialism but hasn't read much theory and doesn't think getting rid of capitalism entirely is necessary or even possible. She believes that everyone deserves housing, as no one should be left in a blizzard or thunderstorm without the warmth of a home. She doesn't believe that education or healthcare should be commodified and that there should be a firewall between investment and commercial banking. Once a broad safety net is in place, funded by progressive taxation, the Sorceress is fine with letting the capitalists have their toys and keep their wealth. The Barbarian and Necromancer find the Sorceress naive for thinking that capitalism can be reformed through electoralism, much less by a third party, but they think that at least her heart is in the right place. On the other hand, the Sorceress sees the Barbarian and Necromancer as extremists, and she is scared to go to their protests or organize with them. She's optimistic that progressives will slowly move to the left with her, reject the two-party duopoly, and save the planet from becoming a fireball. The Assassin is in some ways the polar opposite of the Sorceress. She's a neoliberal technocrat whom no one likes. She graduated summa cum laude from Tristram Law School and looks down on people without graduate-level degrees. She voted for Pete Buttigieg in the 2020 primary, and yes, she knows the dance. She views the Sorceress as divisive for not voting for Hillary Clinton, and she will likely die mad about it. She votes blue no matter who, even if the Democrats nominate Bale to beat Diablo. The Assassin thinks that items should be allocated by means testing rather than universally for whoever needs them. When it comes to foreign policy, she is totally fine with foreign interventions leaving half the world in a wake of fire as long as the Democrats are the ones in charge. She is fine with intelligence services operating in a cloak of shadows, assassinating people and prosecuting whistleblowers, especially if she thinks they cost her team an election. She views all politics outside of electoralism as illegitimate and has called the cops on the Necromancers and Barbarians several times. The Necromancer is an anarchist doober. He has become too black-pilled for his own good. He doesn't trust politicians on the left or the right, or electoralism at all for that matter. He believes capitalism is amplifying the damage done to the earth by climate change, and that even though organizing to combat it is a noble goal, we simply don't have time to reverse the decrepifying effects that have already happened. He mostly just wants to live a good life and spend time with his friends and loved ones. He lives with many of his comrades in a punk house where they have been squatting for several years. While he is mostly averse to politics, he does take part in the occasional black bloc to protest squatter evictions or globalist trade organizations. He sometimes works with the barbarians and sorceresses, but he is wary of their acceptance of the state, and he sees states as just another oppressive hierarchical structure of capitalism. At the end of the day, he wants to see all authoritarian and hierarchical structures eliminated, but he doesn't believe that will happen in his lifetime, so he hopes he is raised as a skeleton after capitalism and the state have disappeared. I hope you have enjoyed this overview of the political ideologies of the classes in D2. I want to thank you for staying to the end of the video, and especially all the new subscribers I've received recently. I'm a relatively new and small channel, so I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment about your favorite D2 class. I have a lot of fun making these videos and will keep doing so as long as people are enjoying them. I'm currently working on a video about anti-imperialism, and you can follow me on Twitter to get updates on that as well as general shitposting. Thanks again. Peace.